And they're bringing us to the end of our business segment. Time now to take a look at what's grabbing headlines here in France. Papers are continuing to focus on the alleged police rape of a 22-year-old black man identified only as Theo. Well, the left-leaning daily Libération publishes an open letter calling for justice and an end to police violence. Flo, you join us now. Thank you very much. What more can you tell us?
Well, let's take a look at the front page of Libération. You can see the names of some of the people who have signed this open letter. So you have intellectuals, journalists. You also have some actors. Omar Sy is the first name there on the list. You might also notice the names of Yannick Noah, Eric Cantona, so sports stars as well. You've got singers. So quite a variety of people who have signed this letter. And you can see on the front page there, they're talking about pour Adama, pour Théo, so for Theo, this young 22-year-old. Adama is Adama Traoré, a young man who died in July following his arrest in the Paris region. And you can see all these people, ils s'engagent, essentially, they're signing up, committing to seeing justice and essentially an end to what they call a certain impunity for certain police officers.
So this letter, as you say, has got support from a lot of big names here in France. The open letter, though, was originally written by a former elected official from a southern suburb of Paris.
That's right. Let's take a look at the letter, actually. This was a letter that was penned by a man named Stevie Gustave. So he's the former deputy mayor of Bretigny-sur-Orge, a southern suburb of Paris. And essentially, you can see that the letter starts by saying, "Dear Future." It's a letter to the future where he really lashes out against this idea, this impunity that exists for certain police officers. It's not an anti-police letter, but it's against this thing that we see, this impunity for certain police officers. And in fact, he says you shouldn't actually call them police. You should just call them uniforms. To quote the letter, it says, I should say police officers, but these monsters shouldn't be associated with members of law enforcement that actually protect us and save us while putting their own lives at risk. No, these are agents of disorder. They are black sheep. And it's interesting, Libération explains today why it decided to publish this letter. It says it decided to publish it in the name of the irreproachable republic, a republic that's clean and doesn't have anything to reproach itself, essentially.
Well, President François Fillon, who's visited Theo in hospital not too long ago, his presidency has been marked by several police incidents. It comes at a time which is quite difficult for France.
That's right. In the wake of the recent terrorist attacks, the police have really been stretched thin, put under a lot of pressure. So you can see here Libération saying that Hollande has really bent over backwards during his presidency to protect the police. Now, Libération points out that it's the first time during his 5-year term as president that there's been a real debate about police violence. But Libé points out, this is not the first time that there have been incidents of police violence. For instance, you might remember last year there were a lot of labor demonstrations across the country, and the police did come under fire at that time for having quite a heavy-handed approach to those demonstrations. But there wasn't a real debate about violence, and so this is what's coming up at the end of his presidency.
Well, in the interest of objectivity, there are two sides to every story. The right-wing paper Le Figaro is reporting from the police side of things.
That's right, and what's interesting is the police is actually expecting more support from the state. You can read this article here that points out that some people within the police say that the government is actually standing by while the name of the police is being soiled. And what's interesting is it comes at a time when public opinion is quite favorable towards the police, particularly in the wake of the recent terrorist attacks. Police have been seen as having quite a good response to the terrorist attacks, and so they're quite high in public opinion. And police officers are afraid that this favorable aspect, in many people's opinion, could be chipped away by this recent scandal. And police officers are actually sounding the alarm and saying, look, our job is really difficult. It's terrible to work in these conditions.
All right, a word now on some French politics. The French centre-right presidential candidate François Fillon is making some headway, we could say.
That's right. Now, François Fillon is facing some trouble within his own party, actually. A lot of people wonder whether he should continue to run for president, given the recent Penelope Gate scandal. Now, yesterday, Fillon had what a lot of people called an arm wrestling match with a growing rebellion within Les Républicains. These are MPs from Les Républicains who say that their constituents aren't happy with the fact that François Fillon is still running for president, so they had some questions for Fillon. According to Le Figaro, he was very successful in this arm wrestling match. He won it. He managed to defend his legitimacy as a candidate before these MPs, these rebel MPs, and he essentially pointed out there's no plan B. It's kind of him or no one else. Now, Fillon has really taken a tumble in opinion polls, it must be said, though, following the revelations from the satirical weekly Le Canard Enchainé. You might remember that he essentially is accused of hiring his wife, Penelope, for allegedly a fictitious job as his parliamentary assistant. There's nothing illegal about hiring your wife, but it is illegal if she doesn't actually have a job.
I can see why. Now listen, Fillon could be facing yet more scandal. The satirical weekly threatening yet more revelations. What else could there possibly be?
That's right. Every week
Something else.
There's a new scandal for Fillon. Let's take a look at the Canard Enchaîné this week. They're actually talking about his campaign spokesman. This is a man named Thierry Soler. Now, according to the Canard Enchaîné, he also hired his wife as his parliamentary assistant, so paying her 4,000 euros a month of taxpayer money for 6 months in 2012. As I said, nothing illegal in theory about hiring your wife, but apparently she didn't have a work phone or an entry badge. So it seems like this might also be a fictitious job, but more has to be seen in an investigation. Now, he's also suspected of tax fraud, and you can read more about that in the Canard Enchaîné as well. Apparently, he forgot to pay part of his income tax in 2010, from 2010 to 2013, and last year he forgot to pay his property tax.
And Flo, never forget that sometimes, just sometimes, support comes from some very unlikely places.
That's right. Fillon is having lunch with his former political rival Nicolas Sarkozy today. It seems like he's seeking a little bit of solace here in Sarkozy's arms. Perhaps they're going to brainstorm about solutions. Remember, Sarkozy does have some experience when it comes to scandals.
Just a little, just a little. All right, finally a word about football. Victory for Paris Saint-Germain. Incredible victory last night.
That's right. And as you can imagine, French papers are thrilled with this victory. You can see here the front page of L'Équipe, the sports daily. Prodigieux. They essentially creamed Barcelona 4-0. Of course, the star of the match there, Angel Di Maria. He scored 2 goals, doing his trademark heart symbol there. It was, of course, Valentine's Day. It was also his birthday, so that symbol is definitely appropriate. And Le Parisien today, if you take a look at their front page, they have one word, magique. Now, magique is, well, Paris est magique. That is kind of the rallying cry for PSG fans. It was a perfect match, according to Le Parisien. The doors to the quarterfinal of the League of Champions are wide open.
I think when you beat Barcelona at 4-0, magique is exactly the word that you need to employ. Thank you very much, Flo, for the roundup of the French papers.